Welcome back to another video from American Fun 351. Our topic for today is the Polish P-64 pistol chambered in 9mm Makarov. And we're just going to jump right into the history of this gun real quick. And this was developed in the late 1950s after the Polish Army put out a request for a new design for their service pistol. And well, they wanted to get away from the WZ-33, which was their Tokarev derivative they were using at the time. This is a Chinese example, but the Polish one was basically the same thing. And so they don't want to use the Tokarev anymore. They wanted something smaller. And that's exactly what they got in 1964 when they adopted the P-64. But they wouldn't really start manufacturing these handguns until 1965 when they got all the tooling set up. And these were all made at the famous Radom factory in Poland, which uses the Circle 11 maker's mark. And if you don't know about the Radom factory, they're really famous for making all kinds of Cold War era weaponry over in Poland. And they have great quality. And they didn't just make firearms, they made all kinds of other military equipment and bayonets, flare guns, other things. But so these have very well machined little pistols made out of all steel. And these would serve as the frontline service handgun until they were replaced by the P-83 in 1983. But some people call these the CZAK. That was a name they used before it was formally adopted by the Polish Army. And that name is an acronym derived from the first initials of the designers at the time. Another thing people like to call these is the Polish Makarov, which isn't quite correct. This is a Makarov pistol. And even though they're really similar, they're both direct blowback 9x19 pistols. They're completely different designs. The P-64 is a homegrown Polish example, and the Makarov was developed in the Soviet Union right after World War II. So calling it a Polish Makarov isn't completely correct, but you get why they might mix that up. But that's just a little bit of background about these. They only made about 200,000, so they're not really common, but they're out there. They're not super hard to find. And now we're just going to go and take a look at its features real quick and talk about how it works. Right now it's cocked, and this is a decocker up here on top. So if you put that down, drops your hammer, and it won't go off. But this handgun is interesting in that it's one of the few in the world that you can have on safe and still rack the slide. So if you had a loaded magazine in there, you could load a chamber, or you could chamber around and not have to, go back and drop the hammer afterwards. You could just do it on a dropped hammer. So that's kind of cool. These have a heel release if you saw me messing with it. And another thing that I think is kind of weird is it's almost impossible to hit unless you physically put your finger in there and do it. And so I don't know how great that would be if you were some little Polish soldier out in the winter snow with some gloves on trying to get your magazine out, but it definitely keeps it safe from snagging on your clothes or anything. And there's not a ton of markings on these. We have a serial number on the frame and one on the slide. We talked about the Circle 11 factory mark already, and that's the year they were made. Mine's the last year of production, which happens to be 1977. On the other side, we have a few proof marks, and mine's a later issue, so it has this A stamp on the frame, and that designated that it had some upgraded internals. They redesigned the trigger hammer mechanism a couple times, and the A mark means that it had the update. One other thing about the hammer back here is mine has a later hammer. In 1973, they switched to this triangle shape so you could cock it easier. But before that, they had a little circle. I'll put a picture of what that one looked like. But yeah, these are great little handguns. Mine was imported by PW Arms. And they had to add this 9x18mm on here because originally the gun only said P-64 9mm, and here in America, 9mm to us means 9x19 Luger Parabellum. But for them over in Poland, that just meant Makarov. And so they added that on there so that we would not get it mixed up. But they're great little handguns. They have a slide holdback on the last round, but if the magazine's in, you have no slide release. So you have to put a new full magazine and pull your slide back and drop it, or you have to take your magazine out to drop your slide. And these are notorious for having terrible trigger pulls and double action. So I don't know if you can tell, but it's really hard. It's like 20, 30 pounds or something. But in single action, I think it's almost too light. It's really crisp. It's, I don't know, 4 or 5 pounds or something. But Wolf Springs makes a kit for these that helps bring that double action trigger down a lot. But it's okay. It's manageable. Here is a loaded chamber indicator. So if there was a pistol bullet in there, it would pop out so you could tell you had a loaded gun. And your sights aren't adjustable, and they're really small, but they're pretty easy to pick up. One thing I really like about this handgun is all the machining. The bluing's really great. There's a lot of intricate machining that goes on, but right here on the top of the slide, I don't know if you can hear that, but there's a lot of nice little crosshatch serrations on there to help cut down on glare when you're looking down the slide and shooting. And one other little amenity they added is they put a little clip on the back of the slide so that when it slings back, even if you have big fat hands, it won't catch and cut you as bad. But these handguns are chambered in 9x18. We've talked about a little bit. But so this is 9x18 Makarov, and this is the 7.62x25 Tokarev that it replaced. And if you can tell, it's a lot smaller. And this is a little bit tinier than 9mm Luger and a little bit bigger than .380. But coming out of a handgun this small, it's really snappy. If you see how big the Tokarev was, going to the P-64 was a big downgrade. They lost about 1 inch of barrel, and another, I don't know, ½ inch on the grip. And so all that combined with a fairly hot little round gives these quite a bit of recoil and bite to them. They're not the most pleasant things in the world to shoot. But the police over in Poland, from what I understand, are still using these as their sidearm in a lot of jurisdictions. They're not super popular here in America. And I don't think they would make a great handgun compared to, any modern polymer frame thing you go pick up at the sporting goods store. But as far as history goes and a little piece of Cold War memorabilia, this is great. They're fairly cheap. I think they're around $300-400 now. But if you're ever looking for a nice little Cold War era handgun to add to your collection, P-64 is one of the cheapest options available, and chambered in 9mm Makarov. But that's pretty much everything I know about the P-64 pistol. If I missed anything, please let me know down in the comments. But we'll take it shooting, and I'll upload a couple videos of that, so make sure you watch for those. And I just want to say thanks for everyone that likes and subscribes to the videos. We're up to 300 subscribers now. So that's wonderful. Very proud of that. And I hope you subscribe so you don't miss out on anything else that's coming out in the future. Thank you so much.